Good evening. This evening we're going to be reading to you The Parent Agency by David Baddiel. So if you're sitting comfortably, I'll begin. Sunday. Chapter 1. Barry Bennett was always very upset at being called Barry. It was a stupid name for a modern 9, nearly 10-year-old boy. All his friends were called things like Jake and Lucas and Taj. In fact, they weren't called things like that, they were called exactly that. Jake was his best friend, Lucas was his second best, and Taj was his third. Although sometimes that order was reversed and Taj was first, but either way, none of them were called anything like Barry. Barry didn't even know anyone or anything like Barry. He didn't know, for example, anyone called Brian or Colin or Derek or any other name that no boy had been called since 1953. Being called Barry was just one, although it was pretty near the top of the list of the very many things Barry blamed his parents, Susan and Jeff, go figure, for. Here, in fact, is that list, which Barry kept hidden under the pillow on his bed, a bed that didn't, by the way, have the fantastic Lionel Messi duvet on it that Lucas had. Things I blame my parents for. 1. Being boring. 2. Calling me Barry. You see, told you it was near the top of the list. 3. Being tired all the time. 4. Not letting me play video games. 5. Not buying me any video games or a Lionel Messi duvet. 6. Being really, really, really strict. Examples: making me go to bed at 8:30 when all my friends stay up much later, not letting me eat any sour Haribos in case they give me a tummy ache, and saying, "That's a swear," when all I've done is say bum, which isn't even a proper swear. Number 7, being always much nicer to my twin sisters, TSE, than to me, just because they're a pair of goody two-shoes. 8, not being glamorous or famous or all the things that the grown-ups in mum's magazines are. Barry realised after he'd written this that it was a bit similar to number 1, but he'd already started the list when he got to this point and had written in pen, not pencil, so didn't want to cross it out and start again. Number 9, being poor. Barry felt a bit bad about writing this one, as he did sort of know it wasn't his parents' fault. His dad worked in IKEA, checking their flat pack stuff into the warehouses or something, and his mum was a primary school assistant. So he knew that meant they didn't earn very much, but he did think that if only they had more money, then a fair amount of issues, 1 to 8, although not being called Barry, would probably not apply. 10, not ever making my birthday really good. This was the biggest thing. All his friends had had their 10th birthdays recently, and all of them had been fantastic. Jake had had a go-kart party, Lucas had had a bowling party, and Taj had had a limo. They'd all gone in it to the cinema to see the latest James Bond film. Barry loved James Bond. It was partly why he hated being called Barry, as he knew that James Bond would never have been called that. I mean, he knew James Bond's name was James, but even if it hadn't been, it probably would have been John, or David, or Michael, or, as Jake often pointed out, Jake. Barry said this wasn't true, although in his heart he knew it kind of was, what with Jake being, in new name terms, really quite like James. Sometimes Jake would even raise one eyebrow, which Barry, try as he might, just couldn't do. Both of them always went up at once and say, "The name's Bond, Jake Bond." Barry agreed without saying so that it sounded kind of okay, certainly better than, "The name's Bond, Barry Bond." Jake, and his eyebrow, were at Barry's house on that Sunday, 6 days before his birthday, when Barry got really cross with his mum and dad. All three of Barry's best friends were on the doorstep listening to Jeff Bennett say, "No, sorry," which Barry thought, and not for the first time, was something his dad said a lot. Jake was holding a Nike Premier League football. Lucas had on a pair of black Converse trainers, and Taj was wearing a brand new this season Chelsea top, which made Barry feel, in his discount store jeans and discount store top and discount store shoes, a bit rubbish. Although not rubbish enough to stop him wanting to go out and play with them. "Dad," said Barry, "I'll only be for half an hour." "No, sorry," said his dad again. "You know we don't let you go in the park without a grown-up." Barry looked back at his father's frowning face. He looked very tired, although Barry couldn't work out how tired, as Jeff Bennett always looked tired these days. There were bits of grey in his hair. In fact, it would be more accurate to say there were bits of black in his hair, because most of it was now grey. He was wearing his navy IKEA shirt, which he didn't have to at weekends. Barry wished he wouldn't, especially in front of his friends. Every time he'd seen them, Jake's dad had been wearing a smart suit, Taj's a leather jacket, and Lucas's dad, who some of the time played in a band, skinny jeans and sunglasses. Even, Barry noticed, when it wasn't sunny. "But," said Barry, indicating with his hand the three boys on the doorstep, "all my friends are allowed to." "Well, that's up to their mums and dads, I'm afraid." Barry turned and looked at his friends, at which point Jake raised one eyebrow, which gave his face an expression that seemed to say very clearly, "Oh dear, Barry, such a shame that you're lumbered with these silly, strict and tired, bad clothes-wearing parents." He didn't say this, though. He just said, "Sorry, Barry," and turned round, bouncing the football as he went. "Yeah, sorry, Barry," said Taj, joining Jake. "Me too, sorry," said Lucas, who for some reason waited until he got to the end of the Bennett's front path before turning around again to say, "Barry." And even though Barry knew that it was good to feel sorry for some people, like starving children on the sad bits of the news, he found that he really, really didn't like it that his friends were feeling sorry for him. So that's the end of chapter 1 of The Parent Agency by David Baddiel. So maybe you might want to get this out of the library and read on to chapter 2, which starts, "But that was just the start of Barry's bad day."